Hey, you guys, are we live? Oh my goodness, we are live. Hi, how are you guys doing today? I'm Debbie Pearson. I'm founder of the Women's Self Mastery, where you can learn the benefits of having an emotional education. Today's progression video is on gaslighting. What in the world is going on? Because gaslighting is like, boom, it's like exploding. And I'm hearing so many of my clients talk about somebody they know, somebody they love, or somebody in their actual family that's doing the gaslighting. So I thought this is a good time to do a gaslighting video. Let's see what that's all about. So let's start off by actually describing what is gaslighting. And I'm going to be looking around, you guys. I got some other stuff going on I'm going to tell you about later, but I'm going to look, just bear with me as I look around. I've got some housekeeping on this side to do. Okay, so gaslighting is a form of emotional abuse. And this is where the gaslighter speaks in a way where they're doubting the other person's reality and leaving the other person confused, right? So it's a tool that's used by certain people who are, for one reason or another, desperately trying to like protect a fragile ego or trying to keep their usually distorted worldview in line, and they're really uncomfortable with what's going on. So they gaslight you so that they don't have to deal with their emotions. But it comes from a place where they don't realize, or I should say they have little or no regard. I don't know how much they realize, but they have little or no regard for how much it confuses or hurts another person when they're in this constantly doubting this other person's reality, right? So it's very, very challenging. Okay, I guess this is a good time to say, if you are live, put hashtag live. If you are on replay, please put hashtag replay. So what I was saying is, if the gaslighter is challenging a person's reality, it might be you say, oh, I feel cold. And the other person's like, why would you feel cold? It's hot. You must be crazy. And it's like what your reality is, being cold, is dismissed, right? Or maybe you see them do something and they deny it. Like, you didn't see what you think you saw. That's not what happened, right? And so you're like, thought I saw that, right? You doubt yourself. And that, or you might point out something that they did and they just dismiss your feelings that maybe you're just too sensitive or something's wrong with you, right? So there's a question that I've received, and it says, is the gaslighter doing this intentionally or unintentional? Like, tell me about gaslighting. So we all will gaslight a little bitty bit, but not in an intentional way. So think about, you got a kid, you're in a restaurant, they do something, bump their head or something, they start crying. You're like, you're okay, you're okay. When obviously they're not okay because they're crying, right? Now, I'm not talking about parenting skills or if the parent is right or wrong. I'm just using this as an example. Sometimes we will say things to try and get the other person to feel better. Girlfriend of yours feels sad about something going on in the relationship, you're like, oh, it's not that bad. That's a little bit of gaslighting because maybe it is that bad. It's when we are not addressing the other person's feelings as they are. And I'm all about feelings, right? So that's what emotional education is all about. Understanding, why am I having this reaction? Why am I feeling what I'm feeling? All right, back to gaslighting. So the other side of that is the intentional side. And so it's hard for me to say it's intentional as if it's like a consciously thought out plan. Maybe, but that's rare. I would say more often than not, it has to do with when they were young, it was a way of protecting themselves emotionally. It worked, and they just kept doing it, and to the point where it's just out of control. But no matter how it happens, no matter how they got it, let's take a look real quick at the three types that are considered intentional. One is dismissal, we have deflection, and denial. Dismissal, deflection, denial. We'll go through those one by one. Dismissal. This is a form of manipulating, right? This is when the gaslighter says something like, oh, you're too sensitive. Why are you so sensitive? Or maybe they say something like, you don't have any right to feel that way. And you're taken aback because it's like, but that's how I feel, right? I'm having an emotional reaction to this, right? But this is the way that the gaslighter dismisses or invalidates the other person's emotional world, their feelings. And on top of that, it's like they judge them for it. So the gaslighter has this sense that they're like a judge and a jury. They get to decide whether what you're feeling is accurate and correct and whether or not it's acceptable. And if it's not, then you need to stop. Okay, that's how they feel. When another person doubts their feelings. So this is akin to telling someone, like I was saying before, like, oh, you should be so angry about that thing that happened. And you're like, I'm not really angry at that, but you should be. Why are you not angry about that? So whether it's like on the positive or negative side of what you're feeling, it's almost like they're just trying to manipulate you in some way to make you feel other than what you feel. So let's see, what was I going to say? Checking my notes, want to make sure I'm covering everything. Okay, so what can you do if you feel like you're being manipulated or dismissed? Like, what can you do? Because you're in the middle of this thing and you're like, I feel almost frozen and stuck. Like, I don't know how to handle this. One of the best things to do is to just decide to not engage. Okay. I have a lot more to say about that, but I'm going to be doing that in the Women's Self-Mastery community on Thursday. So I really hope that you join me there. It's a more private space, and we can actually really get into like specific situations. But to just end it a little bit on this video, it has to do with saying something like, very calmly, as emotionless as possible, something like, okay, thank you for sharing that with me. Or I want to stop talking about it now. Just very calm, and it kind of throws this gaslighter off because they're not used to hearing things like that. They're probably used to hearing you argue with them, and maybe not everybody. The second form of what we call intentional gaslighting is deflection. And deflection is like they take you on a detour. Okay, so maybe you bring up an issue about them that you want to solve in the relationship. Maybe it has to do with something you realize they lied about, or a financial situation. Who knows what it is? But whatever it is, you want to solve it, and they start deflecting and detouring you by saying, oh, well, what about the time when you did such and such? And you're like, whoa, wait, we're not talking about that, right? Maybe they're saying something like, or just something that's just not even related to it, you know, that smoke and mirror thing over here. And you say, you know, I'm sorry, I said you say, I shouldn't say that. It's the other person is like going, what can I do in this moment to stop this that's coming toward me and send it somewhere else, and preferably back to the individual that's sending it in the first place? How can I make you look bad for bringing this up, right? So I'm deflecting whatever you're saying back to you, or I'm deflecting it as the gaslighter. I'm deflecting it away from me. However that ends up being, I don't want it, get it away from me, let's move on to something else, right? So if you insist on it and you come back to it and you go, I really want to talk about this, or they say something about it, the gaslighter is going to ask you, what's going on with you that you're so uncomfortable about this, right? And again, they're deflecting it back to you. So don't fall for it, but recognize what it is so that you can make an appropriate plan about what you're going to do when this thing happens. Like I said, so if you can handle trying to bring them back in and they go to the wayside, and you do it like one more time, that's fine. You could say something like, okay, you're right, I did do that thing. And if you really want to talk about that, if that's really important to you, we can do that another time. Let's put a pin in it. Let's write it down, whatever. But I really want to focus on what I was talking about initially here. And I can tell you, you're probably going to get pushback. I mean, if you don't, that's great. You can have that conversation. But if you do get pushback more than twice, you probably want to just move on and not even worry about it because it's just not worth it. It's kind of like, you may not be able to have the conversation at that moment in time, or you may not be able to have that conversation ever. So again, more information in the Women's Self-Mastery group. That'll be on Thursday, and I'll tell you more about that at the end. Okay, we talk about some comments that they use, things that they may say to you. The third intentional gaslighting form is denial, which is actually a form of self-lying. It's like the gaslighter is refusing to take responsibility. So you may hear them say, even though you saw them, you may hear them say something like, that never happened. What are you talking about? I mean, even if you've got like proof, maybe you took a picture, maybe you've got old emails, maybe so-and-so was there at the same time and you could like grab that person in and say, didn't you hear them say X? And it's like the gaslighter's just not going to be able to hear it. They're going to say something like, no, you doctored that picture. Oh, what are you doing? Getting your friends to lie? You know, y'all are ganging up on me. And it's like they're not going to be able to handle a direct assault to their precious, fragile ego. So they may something like, it is, hi, Patty, so good to see you there. Gaslighting is such a mental FK. And I won't say that here, but we will say all kinds of delicious words in the Women's Self-Mastery community. All right, so in the community. All right, so let's see. If you feel like a crazy person because you know that it happened, but they're trying to convince you that it didn't, and they're trying to get you to question yourself. Like, if you do decide at this point to try to start gathering your data together, recording your conversations or whatever, it's perfectly fine to do this. But be sure to do it for yourself, because you're gonna like come up and say, look, see, I recorded the conversation and you said it right here. And the gaslighter's going to get you. They're going to turn it right around and they're going to say, oh, how petty can you be? Or how dare you record our conversations? Is that what you want me to do to you? So it's like, there's really kind of almost like a no-win situation with them. The best way to win is to remove yourself from the situation. Right? So record the stuff, take pictures, do whatever you need to do. But really that's for you to verify your convictions. Been there, done that. Aww. Hope you learned tons from it, right? It's so amazing that we can live in that world for a period of time and not realizing it. I'll get back to this in a second. I'll tell y'all just a real quick story. Thanks, Patty. It's like I went to work for the military as a civilian, far, far away. So I'm in the deep South at the Gulf Coast, and I went up to Illinois. And I wasn't around any friends or family. So when I went to work, that was like my friends and family, and at least in the beginning. And the guy that I worked with was a really gaslighter. I kept thinking he's got to be a sociopath, but maybe not, but definitely a gaslighter. So I was learning a new technology, something I had never known anything about before. And it had to do with like electronics, and it was crazy, but it was to be able to communicate with the Pentagon on secure lines and stuff. And so it was like all this new stuff, and I had no idea what I was doing. So he would teach me a little bit and then just kind of drift away. And then I would say, hey, what about the other thing? And he would say like, well, I already told you that, or you learned that last week, or we never talked about that before. And I'm like, yes, da, 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 da. Oh, you must have dreamed that. And at one point, I was literally like starting to feel like I was going to cry. And I'm like about 5 months in, and this is happening constantly. And I went to him, and I was like, do I need to go see a doctor? Like, I was like literally beginning to believe that I was like losing my mind. Hey, Kathy, nice to see you. And I was really gaslit by him, like totally and completely gaslit. But once I knew what was going on, ooh, it made me so mad, but I didn't know how to combat it. I just didn't know what to do. So I suffered a lot there until I started learning some things. So I don't want you guys to suffer, okay? So true gaslighter, like, so there's like, to me, different levels of gaslighting. There's a totally unintentional, like I said, a parent trying to tell their kid, oh, you're okay. Or a friend like, you're going to be all right, right? We don't know if they are or not, right? So, but we are not gaslighting them, but we're trying to make them feel better. But it is a form of gaslighting because we're not honoring what they're feeling, especially if they're feeling the sad, hurt, confused, frustrated emotions. Then there's this light kind of gaslighting that I often see in a dismissive avoidant, which is attachment styles, if you know what that is. And then there's the true gaslighter. And then there's the narcissist, which is like a whole nother conversation. So it's like there's levels, but a regular standard gaslighter, you know, they're in a lot of emotional pain themselves. They don't want to listen to you, or maybe they can't allow themselves to listen to you, and they're constantly trying to figure out how to block whatever is coming at them. And I'm talking about you with them, so I'm going to say you. So they're trying to constantly try to block you, and they're trying to figure out how can they get what they want. So again, if we're going back to, if you're going to try to prove it to them and you're like, I'm going to write them a long email and I'm going to explain everything, and you take days, maybe the whole weekend, and you're like, it's just so, and they can't interrupt me and I'm going to get it just perfect. And you're like, oh, okay, let me send it. And you send it to them. What do you think is going to happen? What might they say when they get this long, detailed, very, specific email about what you're feeling and how they make you feel? What do you think is going to happen? Forget it. I hear you. But I've done that. Been with dating a guy or the husband, and it's like, oh my God, they just must not understand how terrible this is, and it hurts so much. And I'm just gonna like write it all out and everything. And I'm not saying that this is specifically what happened, but typically what a gaslighter would do is they're gonna get this long email, they're not even gonna read it, and they're just gonna come back and put it back on you, and they're like, who writes stuff like this? Look how long this email is. This is ridiculous. What is wrong with you? Are you trying to manipulate me? It's all, again, right back on you, right? So they're going to deny what they did. They're going to dismiss your feelings, and they're going to deflect. It's just this triangulation pattern that happens, right? Those three fit really, really well together. Okay, so I'm really, really excited about continuing. Oh, thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Patty said this is so good, Debbie. So I really appreciate that. I am going to continue this conversation in the private space, or more private space. It's just women in the community. The link to the community is in the description. So if you would like to participate, this is what I'm going to be talking about. Let's see. I'm going to discuss the difference between the dismissive avoidant, the narcissist, and the gaslighter. I'm going to do this kind of in an overall thing. We're not going to spend a lot of time on it, but just to get a sense. I'm going to talk about 10 comments that gaslighters make to you that make, if you're the right type of person, or if it goes on long enough, especially if you trust this other person, you're going to go, what is wrong with me? But at least if you have these, you'll be able to see and say, this person's saying those things, and you get to pay attention to that. The third thing is, do gaslighters actually know what they're doing when they're gaslighting? And I'm going to talk a little bit about that, which it's kind of a little bit of a yes and a no, but I'm going to explain why it happens the way that it does. And I guess if there's a fourth thing, it's kind of like live Q&A, and I will stay on and visit with you. I'll block off extra time afterwards so I can stay on and visit with anybody that's actually got a situation that they want clarification on. All right. All right, folks, that's it. Please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to this video, or subscribe. And if you know someone who needs to know about this information, send them the video. They can join the community by just, clicking and answering a couple questions, and then they can get in, and you can invite her to the Women Self-Mastery community. All right, I'm Debbie Pearson, helping you decrease your self-doubt so you can increase your self-worth, which increases your net worth. I will see you guys soon. Take care. Bye-bye.